Welcome everyone to the third day, the opening session of the third day. We're going to be examining the future of knowledge-based development. And I'm very excited to say we're going to be taking a multi-organizational view on this. And it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers and to let you know the organizations that they are going to be not representing, but that they are key members of. And each of those organizations are involved in knowledge-based development. And they are the New Club of Paris, the World Capital Institute, and the World Health Innovation Summit. I'm going to just take a moment or two to just let you hear about those organizations and then introduce the speakers, if that's okay with everyone. Because I'm not sure everyone will be familiar with all of the organizations. The New Club of Paris aims to create awareness about what a knowledge society is as it develops agendas for the knowledge economy. It was established in the early years of the 21st century when it was recognized that societies were undergoing transitions from the industrial age to what they call the information age, and has roots in the economy. It's represented today by Professor Noboru Konno, who is a board member of the New Club of Paris. Welcome, Noboru. And I'll just briefly mention, thank you. I'll just briefly mention your credentials because you go further than just the board member of the New Club of Paris. Professor Konno is a professor of Tama Graduate School of Management, director of EcoSys Lab, a research company for innovation, and specially appointed professor of the Graduate School of System Design and Management of Keio University, and serves as president of Japan Innovation Network and Future Alliance Center. Professor Konno has been involved as a knowledge economist, infusing architectural and design thoughts. Someone's trying to ring my phone. I apologize for that. And welcome, Professor Konno, because we know it's late where you are. So good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you
for
joining.
Me?
Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me to speak here. Thank you
welcome.
very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I'd like to just run through the other organizations, if I may, Professor Konno, and then we'll start with your presentation. The World Capital Institute is the organization behind this Knowledge Cities World Summit, which we've been running for, I think this is the 14th year. And it is a non-profit professional organization based in Mexico, but global in its reach. And it really focuses in on knowledge-based development and knowledge as the most powerful leverage for progress in the world. And representing the WCI today is Dr. Jose Carlos Ramos. Welcome, Jose Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jose Carlos has a hybrid profile. So he's a business manager and an educator. Double welcome on that. His work's developed in the areas of the economy, where he is an activist in economy for the common good and a manager of several business schools, universities. He's an associate fellow at the ESADE, I don't know how you pronounce that, business school, and collaborates with other educational institutions. He is a member of the executive committee of the World Capital Institute and is also a full member of the New Club of Paris. Very busy in innovation and education leader in the economy for the Common Goods local chapter in Barcelona. So welcome, Jose Carlos. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you,
and last but not least, and very importantly, I'm very pleased to welcome Gareth Presch, who is from the World Health Innovation Summit, which supports health authorities, local government agencies, city mayors and governments to improve people's health and well-being, creating new and purposeful jobs while implementing and supporting the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Gareth, we've known each other for quite a long time and is based in the UK, in Cumbria, but works globally as ever. World Health Innovation Summit, I think, was founded in 2015, and Gareth is the founder and chief executive of both the World Health Innovation Summit and the World Health Service. He is a member of Pope Francis's Vatican COVID-19 Commission, Group 2, which is looking at the future, which is excellent for today, a board member in the Global Social Prescribing Alliance, visiting lecturer Fujitsu. My goodness, Gareth, how do you find all the time for these? And Global Fund for Sustainable Development. Gareth is married with 2 daughters, lives in Carlisle in Cumbria in the UK. So welcome, Gareth. Thank you for joining us today.
Delighted to be here. Thanks very much, Cathy.
Thank you. Well, what an amazingly talented and broad panel we have today. So without any more ado, I would really like to invite Professor Noboru to start your presentation, if that's okay with everyone. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. It's a great honor for me. I'm now in Tokyo, which my time is 10:11. So it's my bedtime, but I try to my best. I'd like to speak about the urbanization city, which is, I believe, our common topic. But my point is the urban entrepreneurship, or the era of urban humanization. I'd like to spend some time to talk about my thoughts around this topic from a little corner. First of all, what I'd like to mention is we all know this. The cities are the present day's economic and social unit. It's the basis of our economy and society, sometimes beyond states and enterprises. We've been through the era of states, era of enterprises now, but we are entering era of cities. That's my point. And I'm currently living in Tokyo. And as you see, even though we have a lot of problems, I think that the cities are the engine of global economy. And if you look at these, the research on how sectors of the society and economy play a leadership role, you see now the government and media are not accepted as our strong leadership sector, but business and NGOs, meaning people organization, have sometimes more power. That I think that the cities are a very important field, especially to rebalance our society and economy. So how should we, or how could we see the cities? We could see the cities by 3 spatial dimensions. Our city consists of, first of all, the space of global economy. I mean, not just the economy, but in the context that the urban economies have a significant impact on the environment, such as CO2 emissions. So it's going to be, or it is now, getting a geoengineering challenge. It's about the economy and the environment. That's one big context of spatial dimensions of a city. Second dimension of a city is a space of complex urban infrastructure. As you know, we have some 80 billion people now on the Earth, and it is said that 70% of the population will be living in the cities. But many of the world's largest cities are built on, like a Tokyo, unstable delta regions. So we have floods, the earthquakes, etc. Very unstable environment. But still, people favored or has favored to live in the big cities, even though in these vulnerable conditions. And the third dimension of the cities is the space where people live, real people live. So if you look at the cities, we could see the cities, the combination of these spatial dimensions. And if you can easily look at the city as a source of innovation from many points of view. If you combine three spatial dimensions of the city as such, we could see the city as a source of innovation. And I'd like to focus to the space dimension of people here, the space where people live. We are seeing the great change of the urban ecosystem. Actually, we have been gone through the era of industrial cities, urban, suburban, and the 1980s and so on, global cities. Now we're entering the era of complex, the urban era. So we see that the cities are hotbeds of social and economic inequality. So there's a need to change the way cities have become like this. Probably you have read the book of Saskia Sassen, Expulsion. She is well known as the author of Global City, but her recent observation about cities is expulsions, meaning people are chased away from the cities, meaning by many reasons, like environmental changes. Like Syria had the heavy drought, and it became that the internal war, and the people are chased away from the city like Aleppo at the end. That's the expulsions. Or sometimes war in Europe, Ukraine, they chased away people from their community. Or even the big cities like Tokyo or any cities in the world, the investors buy the center of the cities so that the foreign investment captures the center of the city, and they will chase away the people who have been living there. That's expulsions. And the cities, a hotbed of these expulsions, or needless to say, the hotbed of inequality. That's one. So ecosystem is changing. It's not that the city we have seen anymore. And also we should see the cities as ecosystem of human living in that the space. And another observation is that the city's development used to be based on urban planning, long-term urban planning. But as environmental change has increased, complexity has grown, and planningism, the mind or the thoughts that we can build a city by precise planning has reached its limits. So now we're talking about agile urban design or agile development of the city. So this is the changing ecosystem today. And what we need is the change from the bottom, humanization from the people living in the community. That's our challenge in this century. So humanization of cities have an agenda today. So today we are talking about not just the concepts, but we're trying to talk about actionable schemes as well. My actually research area is TOD, or the city development from the mobility point of view. That the TOD, as you know, transit-oriented development. I was in Jakarta 2 weeks ago, just before G20 took place in Bali. And this is the very normal center of Jakarta scene. The bike service like Gojek, they are very active. They are one of the unicorns in Indonesia. And the situation in Jakarta is very heavy, and they're trying to build the rapid subway and the bus rail, the BST, bus service transit, and so on. But they're trying to solve this problem, the concept of TOD, transit-oriented development, because if you just allow motorization go, the cities will explode. So that they're trying to connect the different mode of mobility, like trains and buses and bikes, with the application and network like a MaaS, mobility as a service. They're trying to solve. So I think that this TOD is one of the actionable solution to solve environmental and the infrastructural and communal problems in the cities. It looks messy, but I think it is getting some result if you get successful TOD development. This is another scene. This is actually the dedicated bus rail, the lane in the middle of Jakarta. So this TOD has a great potential. This is not about Jakarta. You can see the potential of TOD in many cities. For instance, Manchester is well known as I will talk, well known by its urban entrepreneurship, which made Manchester recover from the decline of population and economy from the 1980s. And let's say the Kendall Square, Cambridge, US, in Boston, they're trying to make an innovation district by eliminating or decreasing the cars, but instead that they want to make this area kind of a walkable cities, or city with bicycles, where people will enjoy the face-to-face human communication. And this is actually the heart of the innovation in Boston. Or Bilbao. Bilbao is well known by its Guggenheim Museum projects, but actually the subway projects from the central Bilbao and the suburban area connected and created the community within the city again, which was run down by the global competition and lost the heavy industry zones. And this is a Tokyo case. This is the subway system in Tokyo. Actually, I was one of the committee member of design project for this subway renewal. And Tokyo is one of the successful case of TOD. So I think that TOD transit-oriented development is a case of the actionable scheme for the solve complex urban problems of today. Last thing I would like to mention is, as I said, is entrepreneurial urbanism. I think entrepreneurial urbanism perspectives are essential for the future cities. Of course, this will include TOD. And this is the rough concept or figure of urban entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. It's in between tech startups and societal innovation. It's about social enterprise or social entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, I will speak. What we need is not just the entrepreneurship or startups, but the startups entrepreneurship based on society and its purposes, not on egocentric entrepreneurship that creates disparities, but instead we need altruism in innovation and entrepreneurship. That's necessary for today's cities. Actually, like a Gojek in Jakarta, many unicorns are already urban businesses, such as Uber, Airbnb, and Grab, and the Gojek in Jakarta. Actually, Gojek is already a big the unicorn. So many businesses are already urban businesses, and which have a symbiotic relationship with the urban ecosystem of today and the future. So to focus to urban entrepreneurship means that the combination of tech startups and societal innovation to solve today's urban issues, which include of course environmental issues, infrastructural issues, and communal or human issues. Finally, I'd like to propose a concept of entrepreneurship here. We have, at the New Club of Paris, we have been talking about this concept of entrepreneurship for 2 years. This entrepreneurship is critically important for knowledge society and this urban entrepreneurship. We talk about entrepreneurs, individual entrepreneurs, sometimes egocentric entrepreneurs or startups. So it's not about entrepreneur in that context, nor intrapreneur within the companies who will create networks among within the organization, but entrepreneurship is people who will create networks of altruistic cross-border entrepreneurs which cross over the boundaries and create the new values and deliver them based on the urban the conditions and altruism. So entrepreneurship will lead the change of the system together from bottom up. That's the concept of urban entrepreneurs. And this is my end to comment. So entrepreneurial urbanism is one key solution for the urban future. And as I mentioned, TOD, such as the scheme as TOD, actionable scheme is necessary. And in order to make TOD, this kind of urban entrepreneurship will be the key. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Konno. That was absolutely brilliant, actually. Thank you so much. Lots of claps coming up now, so that's wonderful. I just think that is so much focused on where we want to be, taking the understanding and the knowledge, and then looking at how we can make that operate to meet the challenges which we have in urban areas at the moment. And I'm always delighted to see anything that mentions Manchester. So thank you for that. I think you possibly knew I was there for a long time. But also, I think your transit-oriented development, again, is people-centered, and your entrepreneurship from the bottom up. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. I think it's people-centered, and I think that is one of the big things that would address where you started, the expulsions of people from the city, because cities bring so many positive things to our lives of community and networks and innovation, and the benefits that we've seen over the last 20, 30 years in cities, post-industrial cities, could easily be lost given all the challenges that we face. So thank you very much for that. We will come back to a wider discussion of that and other issues later, if that's okay. But I'd like to move now to Jose Carlos and hear your view of where we're going in the future of knowledge-based development. Thank you, Professor Konno. We'll come back to you shortly.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Jose Carlos, for you
Thank
now.
you. Very, very interesting, Noboru. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, well, I'm going to make a complementary view, and I think it's a more global view. And I will start challenging some of the assumptions that we traditionally, especially from the World Capital Institute, but other institutions were studying and were making research on the knowledge-based development. So I think one of the first ideas that was like a mantra some years ago, especially late in the 90s, we started that discussion and this rationale about that we were living in the knowledge era, comparing with the other former areas where other production factors were the key elements for the development of the economy. So what I try to bring here is that unfortunately not the development of the economy and the growth of the wealth growth didn't come as we expected, based only on services. The reality is that we are still in other activities, as we will see later on. For example, we have the example of India, that was supposed to be a country that was going to jump directly from agriculture to a knowledge-based economy. But the reality is that it's not like this. It's not like this simple. And we're going to analyze why. Okay. So if we analyze some figures, here we have some figures from the World Bank, where we can see the evolution. Maybe it's not very clear, but I'm going to explain it because maybe it's very small. The red curve is represents the employment in the services activities. Okay, as you can see down on the time axis, the last decade, we can see like a kind of stabilization. The green curve represents the services activity, and you can see that it has been a great degrowth that has been slow, and now it even takes a small growth, okay, on the last years. And finally, the blue curve that represents the agriculture activity. So as you can see, it goes down and down and down, and that's irremediable. So I want to call your attention on this stabilization, especially in last 5 years. It seems that services activities is even going down, and industrial activities are a little bit growing up. So what does it mean? So we know that the wealth creation, especially in advanced countries, come from the services industries, but we still need the industry. Okay, that's a very important contributor for the economy. That's for different reasons. One important reason is that the services are not easy to export comparing to goods that are very easy to make trades with them. I want to put here a paradox that links clearly with cities, is that especially with the pandemic, we saw that cities are hosting talent from everywhere, from any part of the world, because pandemic allowed talent to work remotely everywhere. But this is a paradox, okay? So the last point is that we still need material things. Cities need agriculture, and cities still need material things. So how did we arrive here? So it's not magic. I mean, we went to a knowledge-based economy. We went to services, but there was a trick underneath. We offshore agriculture and manufacturing. And well, not at the level to say that China is the world's workshop, but we offshored most of those activities. And with the pandemic and with the crisis we have experienced it recently with the global supply chain crisis and the collapse of the Suez Channel. So we saw that we can't live like this. Okay. In the advanced countries, there is another thing that is very important, is about how we have automated agriculture. So nowadays, for example, here in Spain, we have full lands of wine or other kind of vegetables or whatever that are fully automated. No human interaction on the production. But the sad thing is that there was a very interesting article that was published that was called the Netherlands fallacy, where we were very proud in Europe of being very knowledge-based and saying that industry was polluting a lot, but was not our fault. And it was, because we were offshoring, but we were offshoring also the environmental effects. There are good initiatives now from the European Union that try to put limit to this, but there's still a lot of to do, especially on regarding to inequality. So and now finally we come to a last point related to this evolution of employment and wealth creation. It has to be with the economies of scale, and I want to call your attention on the economies of scale in services, and it comes it has a lot to see with the first graphics we saw before, where there is another increase in the wealth creation based on industry, but also on services. As you can see here, we have finally arrived to a point where we can include, we can get economies of scale in services thanks to what is called robotics process automation. And probably you are familiar with this because you have experienced it if you are a customer of an energy company and you have to talk with someone, or even the invoices we receive at home are all done by bots, not anymore by humans. Okay, and you can see it in financial, you can see it in business data analytics, and of course on document management. So it is increasing productivity in services too. So which are the main issues that kind of evolutions and behaviors we have said before are having in cities and in all the economy? So, well, I could make some questions because I have no the answers, but we can think on which is the future of the global supply chain, because we saw that it's not sustainable. We can ask ourselves if the factories are going to return to original countries, and in that case, are they going to be located close to the cities or not? Because cities need materials, need goods, and need, of course, food. Okay, so this is another issue we have to resolve that is not very clear how it's going to evolve. And another consequence of that automation in the not only in the industry but also in services that we are seeing, according to the United Nations and the OECD, we are experiencing a decrease, an important decrease in the employment opportunities. So, which will be the consequences of this? Okay. Coming back to the evolution of where the population is going to be concentrated, as Noboru said before, of course, cities are getting more and more crowded. It was in 2008 that it was clear this behavior in the whole world, but especially in advanced economies, like for example in the European Union, where cities are getting more and more crowded, and the country is getting empty. So the contribution here from the point of view of the World Capital Institute and complementing the visions from the New Club of Paris and the health institutions is from design. Okay, so my point here is trying to introduce how design can be a key element for sustainability. It is something that is more realistic and has more real impact on economy, because actionable knowledge it has been always far away from the productive economy, and we are seeing now that the design, this discipline that is based on creativity, is making huge impact on business and on economics, and of course on the way of living of the population. So we can say that design is a competitive weapon because it impacts directly on profit and wealth creation and employment. Okay, so we know a lot of examples of this, and I know because I have the opportunity to experience here in Barcelona the development of the city thanks to, as Noboru said before, tech hubs, but also creativity hubs that we have here in Barcelona, and especially the design hub that is a very, very active part. We can mention here just a couple of examples of, for example, Apple, that is a company that manufactures products. I'm sorry, it's a very used example, but it's very easy to understand how they develop products that are very, very competitive because of their design, and not only products, also services. The services they develop, or for example, Airbnb as an example of a platform that is technological, but it's everywhere in the world. So, relating this with the intangible assets that are very, very important, I want now call your attention on how design impacts in every one of the aspects of the value of an organization, a city, or a company. So here you can see a detail of the impact of different ways of different representations of design in every one of the elements of the assets that a company has. When referring to tangible assets, it is evident. We know, every one of us know examples of product or even cars or spaces, urban designs that make real different impact, okay? Of course, sustainable design on that kind of tangible assets, okay? And of course, luxury design, that is a very important way of creating wealth. But when we go to intangible assets, that is something that I normally is not very structured. And not, when you make a review of the literature, especially in science, it's not very well structured. And you can see here the different examples of how the design is impacting in all that intangible assets. So you can see here, for example, I don't know, but for example, related to human, design thinking is very important, and it's a discipline that now it's getting very popular everywhere. But you have, for example, user experience design related to not only to consumer or customer journey, etc., but also to the way we interact with different technologies or with different environments, etc. Inclusive design is very important. But also, you have important assets related to relational intangible assets. And you have here the brand, graphic design, interaction design, and also in processes. And here it comes directly related to something I mentioned before, that are the RPAs or also Industry 4.0. And here you have the design management, the service design, design sprints, etc. And finally, also on intellectual property, we have now the NFTs that are getting relevance in the economy, and it's very related to this. Okay, so that's the point of view of how design can create a difference, especially for cities, because of the wealth creation, based on the rationale I did before. Finally, I want to say that make a little contribution more to clarify that knowledge is not creativity. Sorry, knowledge and especially actionable knowledge gets inspiration, but we have to apply this to real necessities, near needs, real needs that we have in urbans, in cities, and everywhere. And for that is very important creativity. That is something that is not directly the same, or because sometimes we use it as a synonym of innovation, and it's not. Okay, because innovation, it's something that can be, of course, based on creativity, but it's more difficult because making something new with a huge impact, with success, being successful, and that's very, very far harder than the other thing. So the message here is that maybe we used to enhance creativity and design in cities to overcome the current situations and the current crisis we are experiencing. So thank you very much. That's my contribution here.
Thank you very much, Jose Carlos. Spot on time. Thank you. Really an interesting journey that you took us on through how manufacturing left and will it come back? And there's a question here about it on the technology front, you know, whether the knowledge economy is basically a software economy. We'll come back to that perhaps. But I think, you know, calling on creativity is really important for our future, and driving that knowledge right through into innovation and real practice is is a wonderful way to go. I look forward to the discussion later, but for the moment, I think we should hear Gareth now, who's going to talk very much about the health area and maybe more people focused. I don't know. We shall see. Gareth, are you ready to?
I'm ready to go. Can people see my presentation?
Yes, that's better. Yeah, that's great, Gareth. Thank you.
Great stuff. Okay, so it was great hearing my colleagues there, and I hope I can give you an insight into the opportunities and really about the scale of the opportunities as well as we move forward. And hopefully we can achieve a knowledge-based economy by 2030. We certainly have the knowledge. I think that's been demonstrated here. But how do we turn the knowledge into actionable outcomes? And how do we make the intangible assets that we're well aware of actually make meaningful change? And so how do we bring wisdom into the equation as well? So I'm going to talk about this journey that I've been on and what we're currently doing in terms of working with the Sustainable Development Goals and how we can use health as a way and a means and a leverage and a very large economy. So when we talk about economies of scale, you know, we can use the health sector, because when I created the World Health Innovation Summit, the initial concept was to be apolitical, because in my former job, I was an advisor to the Minister for Health. So I understood the importance of political leverage, shall we say. So if you create a platform, and we're familiar with the platforms in the technology sector, and most of these platforms are not based on altruism. They're based on, you know, get as much as we possibly can and monetize things quickly and make lots of money, and then dividends are paid out to shareholders. But the value creation doesn't necessarily go back into the local community. So how can we create platforms of the future that actually generate value and reinvest that back into the community through a social enterprise, as Noboru was giving us an insight into? And the World Health Innovation Summit is exactly that. It's a social enterprise. So let's just start as well with the Sustainable Development Goals and how do they come in. And as Cathy mentioned, the World Health Innovation Summit actually we started in around 2015, and then in September 2015, and we had the 193 heads of state, and they gave us this sort of targets, you know. And I think it's important that we take the leadership on this as well when it comes to Sustainable Development Goals. So we have targets, and then how do we apply that into cities? And we know that 55% of the world's population, for example, are living in urban areas. And over the next few years, we're going to have 2.5 billion people in urban areas over the next 30 years. Sorry. So we've hit 8 billion as well at this moment in time. And so if we move forward, and I just wanted to start with why we need this change, you know, and the system and the pressures that we're under. And we've seen with the flooding in Pakistan, you know, we had 30 million people displaced, and we see the situation in Somalia, for example, with drought and the inequalities that we see, and even the crisis from the war. You know, it's hit energy and health, and the impact that has on our health and well-being, and then the pandemic, which was just come out. Like we had, you know, when we talk about the knowledge economy, I mean, let's be clear here. We were predicting a pandemic for many years before it actually came to happen. So, and we weren't prepared. And the question is now, are we prepared for the next pandemic, and how would we respond? You know, so these are questions that we need to ask. You'll see there in 2019, I gave a lecture in Bucharest talking about the One Health and the need for change in the health sector and why we needed to change and the opportunities. You know, we faced pre-pandemic enormous shortage of staff by 2030, and that's part of the reasons why we had the lockdowns. You know, so to stop the system being overwhelmed, and the cost, the rising population, the number of people over the age of 60, and we were just ill-equipped. And then the pandemic came. So that's why we face these huge challenges, but there are also opportunities. And I wanted to also share from a health perspective the kind of impact that this has had on the health system, but also on the economy, because health is wealth. When we talk about economics and we talk about value creation, if you're not fitting well, you can't have a job. So that's the reality of it. And we're seeing that actually impact in the UK. We're seeing that all over the world. But just the impact as well, just on the health system, you know, we have elective surgeries and people waiting for surgery now. 28 million people, you know, waiting for surgery. It's about 7 million in the UK. Dementia, NCDs, they're all rising. We've lost over 115,000 colleagues. Just also wanted to mention, you know, what are the impacts of COVID on children, for example? We have now 10 million orphans, okay, from COVID. Like these are the impacts that will impact future generations. You're talking about societal impact here on a really big scale. And then, of course, climate change. And we have the situation where we talk about value creation and we talk about impact, but the economic costs are enormous of air pollution, for example. You know, it's cost about 8 billion a day, you know, so we're in a situation where we're not looking after our health and well-being. So that obviously affects our economy long term. That's why we have to make choices. We have to make decisions based on knowledge and wisdom. What we've been working on, what we're proposing is, from the health sector's perspective, rather than working in the disease management, which is about 90% of the budget. So to give people a global context, in health and well-being, right across the sector, you're talking about $12 trillion, and about 60 million people are employed just in the health sector alone globally. What we're looking to do is pivot the model towards well-being, good health and well-being, and create value. So that's on the right-hand side here. You'll see the factors that are there. And I also put a picture of Jakarta, because when Noboru mentioned Jakarta, I actually met the Vice Governor of Jakarta in Geneva recently, and they are working towards the SDGs. And I wanted to talk about the innovation side and the opportunities and the stimulus that health and well-being can actually create in a city environment. This is sort of like the future of business, aligned to societal impact. And I'm very fortunate. I'm part of a global fund for sustainable development at the moment, and we're working to raise capital, to bring capital, to springboard these new ideas towards preventative medicine. And that's what the World Health Innovation Summit. It's a preventative healthcare platform which empowers people to improve their health and well-being by facilitating that community engagement. So at the same time as improving people's health and well-being, you're actually generating enormous value in your local community. And if you look at the investment cycle, because we've got to bridge the gap into the financial sector, which is one of the areas that I'm very focused on at the moment, is working with banking institutions like Santander and others. I had the opportunity to even meet with Deutsche Bank, their chief investment officer, a couple of months ago. And you'll see that the whole cycle of investment comes from the people. And this is where we need to apply that knowledge as well into our public domain, because people need to understand where their pension funds are going. And if you're in the private or public sector, basically the one pot applies, because your public sector pension fund is going into the private sector and vice versa. So we need to understand how this cycle works. And how do you identify these and change policy as well? So we actually have a paper that was presented to the Global Solutions G20, T20, based on how do we move forward during COVID, implementing the SDGs, and how do you get a return on investment from a societal impact? A pound invested, 36 back. And so, as I mentioned about the opportunity cost, £1, 36, $12 trillion. That's how you create your millions of new jobs. And this can be applied. We can also apply a circular economy within the health sector because it's big enough. And then how do you spin off all these different activities where you create new and meaningful jobs? And how do you anchor this into good health and well-being? So in the children's sector, for example, you have with kids, or in work, with at work, with seniors, you know, then you have with green, with energy. So you're creating a platform very similar to the technology platforms that we're familiar with, the Amazons, the Facebooks. Although what you're doing here is you're applying it from an altruistic perspective, but also from a value creation perspective. And then as people understand that when you generate that value, you give it back into the local community, you generate more value and people support your activities. So it's a cycle which grows. And then, of course, the impact can be scaled. And this is all about sharing the knowledge, shall we say. And then how are we applying this in SDG cities? So, you know, on the left-hand side is kind of the current situation, you know, around the shortage of staff, the rising demand, the access to quality care, for example, in people's health and well-being. Just to give you an example of the impact on a societal impact and economic impact of a suicide is about 1.67 million. Now think about the opportunity there. If you could actually employ a community nurse and they save 30 lives in a year, well, you do the maths. The community nurse is probably about 35, 40,000 per year, and you're probably saving in excess of 30 million. So, you know, this is where value can be created quite easily from the health sector's perspective. And what we want to try and do is deliver these community programs, address the social challenges, and we're doing this through social prescribing. I'll talk about social prescribing. We want to create this well-being economy. We want to look at food, nutrition, air quality. We want to look at how do we prevent people getting sick? How do we, you know, have healthy schools, mental health, pregnancy. Pregnancy is probably one of the most important areas that we need to focus on. Stress, burnout, elderly care, falls prevention, loneliness, all of these have economic impacts, but they are also opportunities to create value. We want to establish a healthy city index. That's one of the areas we're working on. Climate action. We want to build social cohesion. We want to have a trusted source of data. So, you know, how do we actually empower people to have access to their medical records? How can we create an economy, a WeChat, for example, where we're able to develop shall we say, data sharing, where we can actually pay people if they want to donate their medical records or give to R&D or create carbon credit captures and things like that. How do we exchange? How do we change these exchanges? So,
Gareth, are you aware that your slides are not moving, or are you
sorry.
Okay? Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
You're okay.
Sorry, I am. Yeah, sorry. And then I just wanted to kind of talk about the impact as well in terms of, you know, the children. How do you measure this? Because everything we have done in the past, we measure everything. We want to make sure that it's meaningful impact. And how do you improve the emotional well-being and resilience in children? So we've demonstrated that. We're also demonstrating the value created, and then you can put that into financial products, shall we say, so that the investors know when they make an investment, they get a return on investment. Just a little bit of a quote here around what the World Health Innovation is and what it's done in terms of an international exchange of best practice, shared values, right on our doorstep. That's when I launched it here in Cumbria, an exciting opportunity to showcase our beautiful county and its people and remind ourselves what resources we already have and our potential to achieving more. It provides an opportunity to improve health both locally and globally in a myriad of ways that help us attract healthcare professionals to the region. And this was just from the first event that we started in 2015. And I thought it's a very important quote because the platform provides people locally in any jurisdiction to apply these principles and scale. So we can do this in any place. So it's important to give an example of how then this works and how does this apply. So what I decided to do, we as a group a few years ago decided to set up a global social prescribing alliance with a number of members, including National Academy of Social Prescribing and the World Health Organization. And we created the Global Social Prescribing Alliance to kind of scale this and anchor this through our health systems around the world. And so what we're doing, and people probably ask, what is social prescribing? Well, it basically connects people and communities to networks to improve their health and well-being. It's about bringing people who, when you go to your GP, you know, you normally only get about 10 minutes. Well, you're referred then to a link worker who can spend an hour and take you as a case. Because most social activity or most of our problems in healthcare are, you know, not necessarily for health reasons. They're mainly social problems. And we're demonstrating the value of this. This is only really the first step. This is how we create these new jobs at scale in all these member states. So we're doing this. We're doing this quite successfully. We've published a number of publications. You can download these publications on good health and well-being, on social prescribing, and an international student framework. So we are changing the model of health systems between, as I mentioned, that are focused on disease management and to a new future, shall we say, health and well-being economy. And governments are beginning to see the value of this as well, because we are lobbying very successfully and we're moving the dial from, as I said, 90% of the budget goes on disease management. We want to see a pivot of at least 30-40% in the next 5 to 6 years. Hopefully we can pivot right across the other way. We still do need the existing health system, be under no illusions. We need that because it's good. It does a lot of good stuff. But this is a massive opportunity in terms of job creation, especially for lower middle income countries. Massive opportunity for them. That's really my thoughts. I hope I've given an insight into what can be achieved and how we can go about it. And I'm very much looking forward to the discussion now, Cathy, and I hope that's given people food for thought.
Well, thank you, Gareth. But unfortunately, we only saw your first slide.
Really?
Yes, I was trying to tell you it wasn't moving forward.
Okay. So my apologies there. I don't
you want
understand.
to quickly run through them just to.
Yeah, please. Sorry, I don't understand why that's happened.
All right, maybe not.
I'll just run through these quickly. So this was
okay.
why I was saying why. So this was the why.
Yeah, very quickly.
You've
got about 5 minutes, Gareth.
Yeah, this was the why. This was also I was explaining the impact in terms of, the background, why we need change, the climate impact in terms of the cost, 2.9 trillion in terms of health and economic costs just from air pollution alone. We actually know we're consuming about a credit card a week in terms of microplastics. So you can imagine the damage that's doing to our health and well-being, and it's basically everywhere. This was the model I was talking about, moving from disease management on the left-hand side, sickness factors, to the right-hand side and the opportunities. And this is a catalyst for innovation. It brings people together. This is what I was talking about in terms of the opportunities for business being aligned to societal impact. Exactly what Noboru and Jose were talking about. And the economic side of it in terms of we, the people, are the drivers of these new businesses. So we support those businesses. That's exactly what the World Health Innovation Summit is a social enterprise. We want to be those we want to be the way to catalyze those new future companies to share that knowledge. And I mentioned about our G20 paper, the pound invested 36 back. These are the sort of spin-off companies these are the areas that you can spin off to, because health can go into every single sector. So you can have children's services, you can have WIS at work, you can have seniors, you can have, go into green energy, waste, water. So we can go into all the sectors, just like these large, big tech companies can. You apply the same knowledge, only you do it from a good causes perspective. This is the value creation, the staff shortages and the opportunities that I mentioned on the right-hand side, how you create millions of new jobs, especially in lower middle income countries. They can accelerate this process very quickly. Again, ESG investment, the SDG impact. I mentioned the quote, the opportunities in terms of social prescribing and our global social prescribing alliance. So you'll see we're working with member state nations. We're actually onboarding them into the alliance at the moment. So having conversations with over 25 nations at the moment, and we want to bring them on board so that we scale these practices. The publications I mentioned, people are very welcome to download those. They're on our website and at globalsocialprescribingalliance.com. And then that was the final slide. So my apologies that I missed that didn't come up, but what I will do is I will share all these slides publicly and put a link out and also load it up on LinkedIn, so people are very welcome to download it. The other important thing to mention here is that all of this knowledge has to be free and open sourced, and that we need to share this with as many people as we possibly can, because that is the future. That was the very first slide.
Wonderful note to finish on, Gareth. And I'm sorry you didn't quite pick up my intervention to say it wasn't working, but great summary there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We have lots of questions in the chat actually, and a few for discussion, but I'd like to come back to one of the early questions, which Professor Konno, you sparked a lot of interest and a lot of questions regarding the word altruism. And I think I'd just like to get your view on that. We have a question about do you see the inequities and disparities adding to the vulnerability of cities, and in themselves creating a vicious circle? So we've got inequality on the one hand, and we've got altruism on the other. So quite like a bit of discussion. Professor Konno, would you like to come back first and please chip in, Gareth and Jose Carlos, in relation to that? And we'll come back to another vulnerability, which would be the climate change.
Yeah, thank you very much. When we talk about altruism, it's not just about the altruism only, because altruism should be balanced with a profit and so on. But if you just stick to altruism, probably you'll forget the economic part of the society, etc. So I think that we should be very practical at the same time, but being altruistic part should be maybe 51%. And you have to do your business 49%. But what you have in mind is basically altruism. But as a businessman and if you run the economy in the society, you have to balance these. That's my pragmatic the opinion. But you shouldn't forget altruism. Sometimes we forget it at all.
Jose Carlos, you have a comment?
Well, I agree. I agree with the last part of what Noboru said, because and you know, you mentioned before that I'm an active member of the Economy for the Common Good, which aims just to push this exactly in this, being realistic and being aware that at the end of the day we need to create wealth, and for that business have to be running, but in a sustainable way, and that means respecting not only environment but also human dignity, justice, etc. And so that's the model that I like very much, and I fully agree with you.
Gareth, I know you're keen to come in. Thank you, Jose Carlos.
Yes, just to say, Cathy, I had a meeting last night with a group of investors, and this came up around a sustainability thesis, which is very much aligned here: people, planet, and profit. And what I really liked under people, they showed a slide and they had around healthy communities. Under the planet, they had clean technology, and then profit was commercial acceleration. And I think Noboru and had explained it so well there. Like 51% should be altruism and 49%. I think that was just hit the nail on the head there from my perspective, because we all recognize, especially in the investment world, and that's kind of an area I'm beginning to leverage into. It's important to make good business, you know, because in order to make it sustainable, you have to have profit so that it can continue. So, and this is a realization, and then you can reinvest back into more good business. Do you know what I mean? So it's a win-win situation for everyone. And I think with the Sustainable Development Goals and what we've just discussed, this brings huge opportunity for our future.
And Gareth, I will add to that it is possible.
Absolutely.
I mean, it can be profits and at the same time being sustainable. I think it's possible.
I totally agree. I think also where the real opportunity is, Cathy, is through public sector, to generate value rather than a cost.
That's absolutely fascinating, because you know, a lot of the impact on our cities is all because of the economic model we have, but that we currently operate. So how on earth do you persuade people to change that economic model? You know, but say in the face of climate change, we are not going to be able to carry on just you know, the way that we've been going. We are going to have to change. And profit is fine if it's spread around, but you know, Gareth, you and I are in the UK today, and we've heard we seem to be the most important thing that the UK government can do is satisfy the international markets.
Yes, but there's reasons for that, because of reckless behavior in economic terms. The markets will always sort it out.
So economy trumps society. Now, what do you think? I used to have a phrase that said, as I worked with an economist on a daily basis, and he used to say, your people are messing up my models. And I would say, your models are meant to serve my people. Which way round do you think it is? That the economy serves the people, or the people serve the economy? Or is that too simplistic? Quick answers each. Quick answers.
Absolutely, economy is for serving the people.
Professor Konno. Yeah.
Well, economy, real economy, actually is innate mechanism of the society and life. And our economy today is an abstract model of that. So it's kind of abstract, the representation of real economy. But real economy should be innately installed in our life and the society. That's the real economy. So that's the economy is for life. But there exists economy for economy.
Yes. Well, we have a question from Javier Carrillo here, who's basically, does the current economic culture work against the possibility of us ever building a planetary we or us for humanity? What do you think?
Not really. I think you look at the cities can be a driver, a wedge to make that transition. I think, because you see the likes of, you know, even the States in California is like, you know, it's one of the biggest economies in the world. But I think there's an opportunity there. But again, it's down to how do we create this. I think this requires a lot of leadership and also quite a lot of knowledge sharing. You know, I mean, people also need to have time to think, to be creative. We're in a society that pushes people towards certain targets, and this doesn't give people time to make shared decisions, shall we say, consented decisions. Do people really understand the economic model that we're involved in? You know, I can certainly say for 35 years, I certainly didn't. So, you know, these are questions we all need to answer or ask, and we need more questions of our politicians as well. Yeah.
So, Jose Carlos, I want to come back to one question we had for you about the knowledge economy and technology. The question was, is the knowledge economy becoming a software economy? How can developing countries and marginalized people overcome the gap between those who are experts in technology and skilled up and those who are not?
Well, I don't think knowledge economy is only IT, because, for example, health has a lot to do. I mean, all the services, activities, tourism, consulting, engineering, financial. There are a lot of activities that are not related directly with software. But of course, software is another one. Yes, indeed, the gap between more skilled people and less skilled people, it's an issue. I don't have the answer, but of course, education is basic. So we need to have a strong education available for everyone. I think it's the only way to contain this.
Okay. Yes, I keep meaning to say that, you know, the WCI does run the alternative economic think tank, and we should bring that to everyone's attention. But I want to ask another question here about whether you think that cities, whether you think that the current governance we have with national, you know, international concerns, national concerns, and urban concerns, whether the governance is quite right. Are we reaching a time when we should be thinking about a new set of Bretton Woods international agencies to really address these major issues of climate change, health, inequalities, etc.? Love your views on that.
Okay. As I mentioned, the power of our conventional governments, the nations are weakening, to tell you the truth. So I think that they are in order to challenge, say, our global, anthropocenic or environmental challenges, we need a kind of bottom-up organization, not just the distributed, dispersed, the collaboration, but the systematic collaboration from bottom up. That means international collaboration among non-profit organizations, NGOs, or communities even, are very necessary to push up. And they should co-create the new system to support the weakening conventional government systems and so on. So it goes beyond the borders of the countries and so on. So that's what we should think.
That's very interesting, because that's a challenge to current democracy, isn't it?
Maybe new type of democracy, maybe, because it's not about your nation's democracy, but they are more global democracy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what we're seeing at COP27 at the moment. Actually, the challenge.
Yeah, that's
Gareth,
the
do you
one.
want to come in on this
Well,
issue?
yeah, I think we are seeing a challenge to our democracy, because if you look at the role social media plays in our democracy, and if you look at some of the actors involved in social media and misinformation and disinformation, and then the cyber threat that we face, and then if we look at the institutions, they're based on architecture that's structured hundreds of years ago, so it's not fit for purpose. So these are just the reality. We need to move forward. We need to be more dynamic. We have to be agile. We have to be able to move quickly. We've seen that in the pandemic. Digital gives us that opportunity, but it's got to be managed carefully, and it's got to be navigated. So I think this is a huge challenge going forward, but I think we can see a change, because if we just look at the democratic vote that we've just seen in the US, and we see the Generation Z's, where are they going? And if that's the same in the UK, so we know that's coming. So that can give me and you and everyone here a bit of food for thought. And I mean, my 9-year-old daughter wants to be an artist, and she wants to help homeless people. So for me, the future's good. So I think this is where we need to look to how do we facilitate that rapid change.
Was it Carlos? I see you nodding as well.
No, just I agree with all they're saying.
So, big challenge to get it to happen, however, I think. So, actionable knowledge, is a bit of a challenge. Do you think the role of cities might play a special role in this, or do you think it is right down to the individuals and upwards from the individual?
Cities are ecosystem, as I mentioned. That means the city is not as a kind of virtual idea, but it's an ecosystem of the local governments and companies, countries and companies and the financial sectors and everything. And someone should, like Jose Carlos mentioned, we should design. Design is very important for ecosystem, and we should together design ecosystem on the city, which is the platform, and create ecosystem on that city. That's a critically important.
That's a very important point. Thank you, Noboru. I'm conscious that if we're going to have a little bit of space for before we go to the next session, we should wrap up. So I quite ask you to give a final, you have a final view that you want to make about, are you hopeful? Are you not hopeful for the future? What would be the biggest thing we can do as these three organizations that have come together to actually demonstrate the power of collaboration, the fact that we're dealing with very complex questions, and we have demonstrated rather possibly greater depth in some skills than others. And if we come together, is collaboration at this level a valuable thing to be working on and bringing it together, rather than us all trying to play single golfers, single club golfers? Your views on the benefits and disbenefits of collaboration would be most welcome. No points.
No, the question is, do we know how to collaborate?
That's a good question.
Do we know how to collaborate effectively? Because that's part of the problem. We're very much in a mindset of, we don't collaborate that well. That's probably a huge problem that we face. And if we can overcome that problem, that challenge, and have a shared value, a shared vision, I think once you have a shared vision, then it can go in one way, So these are opportunities as well, Financially, I don't think there's any shortage of finance. I mean, in terms of profiteering within cities framework, it's very profitable. Just to mention, there is a capital cities initiative that is being launched through the SDG cities, which will bring in Tokyo and Abu Dhabi and other cities, and that should be a catalyst as well to help things transition.
I would like to finalize my intervention with adding some ideas to the inspiring ideas that Noboru shared. I fully agree with him in terms of how important is that it has to be a movement from base to top. So my experience, but I didn't make a lot of research on this, but I can explain my experience being part of the economy for the common good and also from an ecologist movement, is that individuals, we are very frustrated. We feel very frustrated because we see that we can't do a lot for fighting climate change, climate emergency. And it is very far from us seeing how government or international important representatives are meeting and signing green deals or whatever, but we don't see how to operate, how to improve and how to fight. My experience is when you do things on your neighbor, for example, in a local collectivity, and you collaborate and you do any activity, it doesn't have to be a very important one, or maybe only planting trees or something like that. You get another step in your mindset because you get realized that there are other people that think like you and other people that want to fight like you. So that gives you more strength when you come back home. And that, I think, links very well with the idea of the international non-profit collaborations that Noboru said before. That's why I believe a lot in federations like, as I said before, the economy for the common good, because we are local chapters that are interconnected around the world. And that's the way I think we can change things, but it takes time because as I saw some comments from Gunther Koch, it's a new model. It's not the classical model from governments, country governments, etc., etc. That's very different, but that's my experience. I don't know. I didn't study that.
I think that's a wonderful, hopeful note to end on, Jose Carlos. Thank you. Collaboration is important at all levels. And when we come back to, Antonio Guterres today, he's asking for global collaboration. Well, local collaboration, city collaboration, global collaboration, maybe we'll get there somehow. I just want to thank each of you for absolutely wonderful presentations, thought-provoking, innovative, and challenging. So thank you to each and every one of you. It's been a wonderful session. There will be a recording, and I hope that Gareth will be able to use your slides in that. I apologize for the technology. I too suffer from the technology. So
my apologies.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Cathy.
Thank you each and every one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.